How would Izuku fare in the world of RWBY? Strong magical artifacts? Mega amounts of power? Well, how would an unstoppable force fare in that world? Well, we've seen that today in the world of What If Izuku Wasn't RWBY, with One for All. Hope you'll enjoy.
Ugh, there's so many, I can't keep track. Mina groaned as she leaned against the wall of the hot spring, deciding to give up on further inspecting her boyfriend's back. Having noticed that the scars he had accumulated were colored fairly differently under the current conditions, she had begun to try and count them, a process that had been derailed when she also started trying to remember which event had made each mark appear, much to Karai's amusement. The boy chuckled as he turned around to face her and sit against the opposite wall of the steamy, shallow pool before saying, "To be fair, I probably would have forgotten a fair number of them by now if I hadn't recorded them in my journal." His face twisted slightly in thought as he muttered, "Truthfully, it's pretty concerning that I have this many scars to begin with, especially given that I haven't even gone pro yet." It was their second day in the town where they had chosen to remain hidden until it was time to meet up with Gran Torino and Eri, and Mina had expressed a desire to try the local hot springs. Since it wasn't a particularly active tourist season at the moment, booking a session had been relatively easy, and in the end, Karai wasn't even surprised to find that she had gone and gotten them a mixed bath for an hour. Supposedly, this hot spring was supposed to be good for deep muscle fatigue, which he supposed he could use after his rather extraneous efforts in Kanto and subsequent meditation in a cold cave the previous day. He had been fully expecting his girlfriend to make a pass at him the moment that they were alone, but to his surprise, she had seemed content with simply enjoying the hot springs in his company without acting on any ulterior motives. At first he wondered if she wasn't just going to pounce the second that he let his guard down, but after a little while he realized that she really just wanted some time to chill with him. "Maybe Eri can rewind your skin, or something," the pink girl suggested in response to his comment concerning the marks on his body. A sly smile creased her face as she added, "But I suppose there's something to be said for the look of a brave man who knows how to handle a difficult challenge." Karai rolled his eyes before saying, "I think this many scars only goes to show that I don't know when to get out of the way, which doesn't make me brave. It just makes me stupid." He was about to add more when he was hit in the face with a small wave of hot, stinging herbal water. "Ow, hey!" he complained as he scrubbed at his eyes. "You're not stupid," Mina said without any traces of joking in her voice. "Hard-headed and a trouble magnet, sure, but don't ever call yourself something you're not." Karai finished scrubbing his eyes before he nodded at her and said, "All right, point taken. Sorry." "Come on man, you know how I feel about people talking bad about you," she smirked as she poked his leg with her foot. "That goes for any and all talkers. I get it, and if you're trying to tickle me, you're hitting the wrong leg," he grinned back. "My scar tissue is the sensitive part, and I wasn't very ticklish at the beginning of the school year, remember?" "Oh, yeah," she pouted as she slid her leg away from his. A thought seemed to occur to her then, because she asked, "Are they starting to hurt yet?" Eh, they're a little more sensitive to heat than when they first healed, and as we've discovered, tactile contact makes my skin crawl fairly easily," he shrugged. "It's not a constant pain, and since Recovery Girl's quirk healed my body the best that it's going to be each time, I think that means that the nerve endings under the skin have long since finished growing back. Maybe as I get older, there will start to be some problems, but I doubt it'll be anything that I can't handle. If anything, my bones are feeling it more than my skin right now." She gave him a concerned look before asking, "Is it bad?" "It's a good kind of pain," he admitted with a dry grin. "It's adding to the ache now, but I know that this is good for me, so I can tough it out. I've definitely had worse and survived." "Don't go trying to hide your pain again, if it does get to be too much," she warned him. "We don't need a repeat of what happened after we all moved into the dorms." "Don't gotta tell me," Karai said with a small shudder as he looked at his right bicep, which still bore a number of scars that he had put there himself whilst suffering from phantom pains. Even though Eri had regenerated the limb for him, there were a few marks that had been scoured into his flesh that ran higher up than the restored part of his body, so they had been left as they were. The memory alone of the agony that his mind had subjected him to was enough to make him feel queasy, but it also helped to reinforce a notion of his. Looking away from the marks, he then added, like I said, since I've had to deal with pain on that level, I doubt that any resulting scar sensitivity will be too tough for me to handle, if the time comes. Oh, my dear, Mina sighed as she shook her head slowly. With all that gray hair and battle scars, people in my extended family are gonna think I'm marrying some old hero who's already on death's door. Karai burst out laughing at that, and he instinctively started to curl over as he held his sore abdomen, which just resulted in him getting a face full of water that he had to spit out. This got Mina laughing just as hard, since the only way to describe his currently flustered appearance was as absolutely ridiculous. By the time he had rid himself of the excess moisture, he made a face of disgust and said, "Herbal water, smells nice, feels good, tastes awful." Ah, Mina continued to giggle. Well, our time's just about up, anyway. Let's go eat something to get that aftertaste out of your mouth. Seriously, that tastes like feet, Karai complained as they moved to exit the hot spring. From the springs, Karai followed Mina to a restaurant that she had apparently looked up earlier in the day. As they got nearer to it, he thought that he may have passed it by a few times during his last visit to the town, but he couldn't be completely sure. As they walked by several people who smiled and gave them friendly greetings in passing as they went about their separate days, which he realized was becoming something of a novel experience for him. Ever since he had won the sports festival and appeared on television alongside Gangorka, Karai had begun to receive looks of acclaim from the occasional passerby. When he bested the Shadow Nomu in Fukuoka, he had been living on the UA campus, so he had only a limited knowledge of the fact that he would no longer be able to go in public without more than one person recognizing him as the guardian hero, though he had begun to get more of an idea of that reality on Nabu Island. Doubtless that when he officially made his return from the dead and his new appearance was revealed to the public, his popularity would only increase once again, so to be able to walk around under the guise of a normal boy out for a night on the town with his girlfriend was something he was determined to enjoy for the limited time that he had available to him. Once they were seated inside the aquatic-themed establishment, Karai decided to bring up a topic that he had been about to address at the bathhouse, before he had been interrupted by their respective laughing fits. Had any time to think about what I should do with my hair when we get back? He inquired after the waiter had left with their orders in hand. Mina, not having expected the question, took a moment to peer more carefully at his head, and the state of the mop that adorned it. Normally, he kept it relatively short, but his last haircut had been weeks before their mission to Nabu Island, making it essentially 3 months since had asked Azui to give it a trim. Her having younger siblings meant that she was well versed in caring for differing hairstyles, and she had been happy to lend her cosmetic skills to her classmates who requested it. His silvery strands had grown to the point that they brushed the nape of his neck and hung over his eyes if he did not comb them to the side. The last time he'd worn his hair this long was when they had been attacked at their summer camp. After a moment, she lowered her gaze to meet his eyes before saying, "You don't like this look?" He shrugged before admitting, "I suppose I don't feel too strongly about it, which is why I asked your opinion. It's really the only one that matters." As Mina's cheeks heated up, he then made a thoughtful face as he added, "Although, come to think of it, I kinda look like the first with my hair like this." "Wait, for real?" she asked, slightly startled by this revelation. Since they were in public, she knew that him saying first meant that he was referring to the original wielder of One for All. What did he look like? Like I said, kinda similar to me, Karai shrugged again. Although, his hair was longer, and he had green eyes, sort of like Izuku's. Also, he was usually fairly sick and he looked it. "So a skinny love child of yours and Izuku," she grinned, causing him to hang his head in exasperation. "Very funny," he grumbled. "Seriously, though, what do you think I should do with this mess?" So saying, he reached up and pinched some of the strands that had fallen over his brow when he had lowered it. "I mean, I think you look pretty cute, no matter what you're doing, so maybe I'm not the best person to ask," she admitted. "I guess it all really depends on why you would want to change it up." Karai grew quiet for a moment before he looked straight at her again and said, "After I had to switch to a replacement arm for a while, I know it made you really uncomfortable to look at. I wanted to avoid a repeat of that discomfort on your end, so I honestly just want to know what would be your preferred look." In that moment, Mina reflected that she should stop being surprised that Karai often looked for ways to be more accommodating to her needs and even wants, but it still caught her off guard, regardless. How does he keep being so thoughtful? She wondered as she felt her cheeks coloring again. It took her a moment before she was able to put her thoughts together well enough to form a cohesive message. When she did, she said, "Honestly, I think I should just be more appreciative of you as you are." "What do you mean by that?" Well, you look the way you do now because of everything you've gone through for us," she replied with a shrug of her own. "I think if I told you to change that, it'd be kind of like me saying that those events don't matter, when they're a large part of what makes you who you are, now. I don't find you any less attractive for all these changes, and if I did, that'd be pretty shallow of me, wouldn't it?" Now it was Karai's turn to redden slightly as he scratched at the scars on the left side of his face while he said, "Thanks for saying that. But you really don't have a preference about any of this?" "Well, the long hair is a very comic book hero look, so I can't say that I dislike it," she giggled. "You're cooler than any manga protag anyway, so if you like it, I'd say you've earned the right to wear it like that. But if I really had to pick, I'd say that I like your hair shorter." "Oh? Why's that?" "Your hair was short when we met," Mina reminded him with a coy grin. "Plus, it lets me see your big, beautiful eyes." Karai had gone to take a sip of his drink, so he nearly did a spit take when she paid him that particular compliment. His eyes bugged out spectacularly, and he nearly failed to keep the liquid in his mouth, but through a supreme will of effort, he managed to down it before gasping out, "That's a new one." "Ha! I knew I could still catch you off guard." She laughed. "Geez, and here I was, thinking of how I'd present myself at our wedding when we get around to it." Karai coughed as he wiped his mouth off with a napkin. He then grinned broadly as Mina froze in place, followed by the words, "Oh, sorry. Did you forget I learned how to play this game, too? Wah dash. You jerk." She sputtered, though the accusation was ruined by another round of giggles. "Using the topic of our wedding is a low blow. Don't hate the player, hate the game," Karai smirked. "Still, while we're on that particular subject, I gotta admit that I'm curious, what kind of wedding did you dream about having? I'm guessing you've had something of an idea since you were a little girl." "What kind of assumption is that?" "Just one based on the fact that you like shoujo movies a little too much," he answered. "Also, I know you better than anyone. You can't seriously expect me to believe that you didn't have doodles as a little girl about what kind of guy you wanted to marry, and what your wedding would look like when you did?" Mina made a slight pouting face, no doubt irritated at the fact that she had been seen through so easily, but Karai simply waited until she mumbled, "You know that little spiral notebook I keep next to the vinyl rack in my room? I know the spot, but I can't say that I remember that item in particular," he admitted, though he retained his knowing smile. "Is that what it is?" "Yes." She nodded, her cheeks coloring further. "I had one when I was 6, but I melted it with my quirk when my brothers tried to go looking through it. I got this new one after our talk about getting married following our class fight against you." "Oh?" Karai replied with a raised eyebrow and wider smile. "Am I allowed to see what's inside it?" "Definitely not," she said quickly with a rapid shake of her head. "What, why not?" "Reasons. There's a sketch of what you want your dress to look like in it, isn't there?" "Yes." "Neat," he chuckled. "All right, then, I won't ask to see it again. I'd still like to think about what we're gonna do for the event, though." "Depends on how many people we'll be inviting," she replied as the waiter returned with their food. After thanking him, she went on to tell Karai, "I've got a few extended relatives I need to invite, grandparents, an aunt and her family on my mom's side, and a couple of my dad's siblings. Shouldn't be any more than 20 or 30 people, depending on if their kids come." "Well, it's just Akurui, Shukin, and Aunt Sakura for me," Karai shrugged. "Dad and Uncle Shiro were the only kids from their parents, and both my sets of grandparents are dead. I'm gonna submit an appeal for my mom to get out on a temporary parole for the wedding, but I kinda doubt it's gonna work. Since she was an only child from her family, I don't have any other extended relatives, either." "Oh yeah," Mina said, her mood growing a little more somber as she put her hand on Karai's, which had grown still. "I'm sorry, sweetie." "Don't be," he replied as he shook himself and squeezed her hand gently for a second. "I'm happy that I'll be able to have any family on my side at all. I'm even happier that we'll get to grow our family together." Besides, a smaller wedding sounds like it'll be a lot less stressful than a big one, especially if we're trying to hide out from the paparazzi. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them to try and track our wedding down once we make it official, she said with a slow shake of her head as Karai bit into his crab cake. You're hardly gonna be able to walk the streets without a crowd of admirers when you make your comeback. Funny, I was just having the same thought earlier, he admitted once he was able to speak again. Most people would have interpreted this comment as arrogance, but Mina knew that he was honestly just worried at the prospect. Ah, well. We'll figure something out to do about them when the time comes. I'm still trying to figure out how many people we're gonna invite outside of our family. Well, we gotta have our classmates come, for starters, so there's 22 people on their own, and we should probably invite some of the teachers, too, she mumbled through a mouthful of pike. You really think Bakugo is gonna come? Karai chuckled. He'll probably just tell us to piss off. Also, Team RWBY will more than likely be at home by that time, so who's to say that they'll be able to make it? You really think Shni would miss a chance to show off how rich she is by bringing us whatever expensive gift she'll think up in person? Nina replied with an arched eyebrow. Ah, so the real reason for the invite comes out, Karai chuckled. I knew you didn't like her that much, you just want her to bring her wallet. He was laughing, so she knew he wasn't serious. Even so, his girlfriend felt the need to reply, she's not that bad, we've all gotten a lot closer since the provisional exam, and she's been nicer to Izuku since they joined the same agency. I know, he assured her as he held up a hand in a gesture of concession. Okay, we'll invite them when the time comes, too. Anyone outside of our class? I'm not sure, she admitted. We are still talking 2 years down the line, here. I know all of us in Class A are gonna be BFFs, but I don't know about the other people we know now, or the people we'll probably meet at some point. Wait, I got it. Karai said as he snapped his fingers in realization. Togata and Amajiki. I can't forget them, and I guess we can't exclude Hato from that invite. Little Eri, Nina reminded him. If we did it now, I'd want to have her be the flower girl, but by the time we can get this thing going, she'll be a little too old. Good point, Karai nodded. After a moment of quiet chewing on his food, he then said, I gotta have the Idas, for sure. It's kind of a given with Tenya, but I also want to invite his parents and Tensei him especially. Why him in particular? She asked curiously. She knew that they were close, and that Karai looked up to the older Ida as a role model, but it seemed like there was something more to it than just inviting a family friend to the event. The boy scratched at the back of his head before he said, I won't do it if you're not comfortable with it, but I was hoping to ask Tensei to fill the role of my father at the wedding. Mina blinked in surprise, but since she said nothing one way or the other, Karai felt obligated to explain, I've been thinking a lot about who I looked up to, the way that a boy looks to a man for a role model other than his father, and I kept coming back to him. He's always had my back when I've needed him, and he's one of the first people I always remember when I think of a good hero. He gave up literal pieces of his body so that I could have an arm again, and he protected me and the others after the incident in the caves. Those are just the big things, but there's honestly 101 other reasons I could think of for why I want him and no one else to stand in for my dad. Mina was once again made to sit in silence with her thoughts for a few moments while she mulled this over. In all honesty, she was a little disappointed in herself for not considering how much the lack of Karai's family being present for their wedding was probably going to hurt him. That wasn't to say that their union would be a melancholy event, just that she wished she had thought of ways to make up for it before now. Note to self, start putting ideas for that in my journal when we get home, she thought with a flash of irritation. To try and conceal her anger at herself, she stirred and said, I'm sorry I didn't think about how that part of it all would affect you. I can't even imagine trying to have someone fill in for one of my parents at our wedding. Nor should you have to, Karai said with a light smile back on his face. At any rate, I'm grateful that I have friends close enough to rely on as family. Speaking of close friends, Mina said as she laid her eating implements down. Any thoughts as to who you'll have in your party? Party? Karai repeated. Are we talking a traditional Shinto wedding, or one in a chapel? If I'm being honest, I wanted a Shinto-style ceremony when I was little, but now that just seems like a load of extra work that doesn't really feel worth it, Mina admitted with a sheepish grin. I know, you'd think I'd want to go all out with the whole shebang when I get married, but when you stop and think about it, the wedding is a party to celebrate us starting a family together. A chapel wedding and reception seems a lot more easygoing when it comes to prep and the actual party. I just want everyone to have a good time, especially after I've gone all bridezilla on them. Karai raised an eyebrow at that while his lips quirked upward at the corners before he asked, I thought you wanted things to be chill for everyone involved? Yeah, well, I wanted the same thing for the school festival concert, and look how that turned out, she sighed as she placed her cheek on her hand. If I got that high-strung about a song and dance number, imagine how I'm gonna be on the most important day of our lives. He had to admit, she made an excellent point. In order to take away from the thought of the stress that day would probably cause her, he decided to say, back to your question about my party, then I do have my boys in mind. I pretty much made my decision once we started telling our friends, actually. You? Achiko for my maid of honor, Mina answered without missing a beat. Well, that might be a little awkward for Izuku when Akarui lines up with his girlfriend, but I'm sure we can make it work, Karai mused. I figured you'd pick your brother for the role, Mina said approvingly. I know he'll be good for the job provided we can keep him from arguing with whoever we get for a wedding coordinator. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve to ensure his cooperation, her boyfriend said with a slightly sinister grin. I'll leave that to you, then she giggled. I was also gonna have Yamamo and Hagakure be the bridesmaids. Nice, Karai nodded quickly. I know that they'll both be a big help. I'll be asking Shukin and Ida when the time comes. Also good picks, but I thought that you and Ida weren't besties for resties anymore? Mina asked with a teasing smile. True, but he's like another brother, Karai admitted with another smile. He's got squatting rights over Izuku, and he really is a good friend, in spite of that hard head of his. Sweetie, be honest here, Mina said as she looked him dead in the eye. You just want to put him in a position where he can't get out of saying a lot of nice things about the both of us, because we both know that even though most people take the opportunity to make fun of their friends when they're given the floor like that, his sense of duty won't allow him to be anything but the picture-perfect groomsman. Karai held her gaze steadily for several long moments before his straight face broke apart in favor of a barely contained series of laughs. I knew it, Mina laughed along with him. She had meant to sound more accusatory, but the part of her that so enjoyed pranks was absolutely loving this idea. I think I may have become a bad influence on you, sweetie. That's okay, I love you for it, he chuckled before he surprised her by grabbing her hand and planting a kiss on it that ended with a somewhat loud smack. About a half hour later, they were strolling through the evening town at a leisurely pace, though Karai knew that he was going to want to sleep again soon. As restful as the previous evening had been, his body was still in need of recovery from the events in Kanto. After Mina had been humming a tune that he recognized from one of her favorite pop albums for a minute, he nudged her with his elbow so that she would look up at him. Once she had, he asked, what should we do tomorrow? I dunno, you pick, she said with a cheery smile. We've got a full day off tomorrow, too, so we've got plenty of time to do whatever you can think of. You're the spontaneity master, though, he protested. I'm no good at coming up with stuff on the spot, you know that. Yeah, but we did a bunch of stuff that I wanted to do today, she replied with a cute grin. After we wrap up at a desert place tonight, it's your turn. You want dessert? He inquired as he rubbed at his abdomen. I dunno that my stomach can take much more. I'm not used to stuff that isn't just made for nutritional value anymore. I thought you said that the hospital food was pretty decent. It was, but it wasn't really made to be enjoyed by the palate as much as it was supposed to keep us well-fed and healthy, he shrugged. I guess I didn't realize how much extra stuff goes into food that we don't actually need until now. Ah, but that defeats the whole purpose of us going to get dessert. Mina pouted. It was supposed to be more for you than me. What? Why? No reason? She tried to say, a little too late to hide the guilty look on her face as she turned away. Mina Ashido, what were you planning to do to the desert, and or me? He asked as he stopped walking, a mock frown on his face. Nothing. She protested as she thumped him on the chest, which failed to even make him flinch. When she saw that he wasn't budging until he got a satisfactory answer, she groaned and said, "Fine. I wanted to give you a birthday cake 'cause we couldn't celebrate together during New Year's. I even got Akarui to buy some fountain sparklers before he left so we could set him off at the beach like a mini fireworks show afterward." Karai just stared at her with wide eyes while she fidgeted in place as she went on to add, "I don't have your present with me, since it's back at the dorms, and I wasn't able to pull off the surprise party that me and some of the others were gonna put on for you the week after winter break. You did such an amazing job with my birthday, and I wanted to try and do the same for you, but everything kind of fell apart, so now I just wanted to do something to celebrate with you." As her voice trailed off, Karai moved forward and hugged her tightly against his body until she returned the embrace. "I'm sorry that I robbed you of that chance," he told her in a soft voice. "But I promise you'll have plenty more chances to pull off the best surprise party that I've ever seen." When she nodded wordlessly against him, he then asked, "Would it make you feel better if we went and set off some fireworks on the beach?" Another nod got him smiling as he said, "Let's go grab em, then." Karai wound up going to the room alone while Mina stayed in the lobby to look at some brochures. He quickly found the bag that she mentioned his brother had left for them, and upon inspecting its contents, was glad to see that they had everything they would need to light the pyrotechnics. "I guess we'll use ocean water to put out the residual heat in the bag for trash," he decided as he went to pick up the sack. However, he stopped when he saw that there was a small box that had been hidden by the bag, topped by a note that looked to be in Akarui's handwriting. Setting the bag aside, Karai picked up both of the items and quickly read the note that had been left. It went, "I hope you're the one reading this, Karai. Ashido, if you pick this up, put it back and pretend like you didn't see it. If you don't, I'll know. Now, to my brother, I say it's about time you stop letting this thing sit in a drawer collecting dust. I know you were planning to use it on New Year's, but that's obviously a bust, and it's only a matter of time before she finds it on her own in your room. I better see this thing on its rightful place when you get back from beating the stuffing out of Hummer-Eyes. P.S. The box is rigged to electrocute anyone that isn't you, so don't worry about the safety of its contents. That little dash." Karai tossed the note aside and opened the box, relieved to see that the item in question was still present. If he had lost this thing, I'd have my future self kill him. "Don't go dragging me into this," the 10th said from the back of their mind. "Then don't go dragging me into nightmare caves just to have a chat." Snapping the box shut, he pocketed it and snatched up the bag so that he could go and meet with his girlfriend in the hotel lobby. In spite of his irritation, he couldn't help a smile from breaking out across his face as he thought, well, Akarui did say that he wanted to help Planet when the time came. Guess this is his way of contributing. "You're still going to punch him the next time you see him, aren't you?" the 9th vestige asked him. "Duh." It wasn't long before the couple was on the beach, grinning in delight as they shivered against the cold air of the ocean while they watched the fire and lights dance with a multitude of colors on the sand in front of them. "Happy birthday, Karai," Mina said after he lit one that seemed like it was set to go on for a while. "Even if it's way late, I'm still glad to be able to celebrate with you." "I'm glad that I get to celebrate it with you," he said as he felt his legs wobbling. He didn't know why he was getting so nervous. He already knew the pending outcome. Even so, his heart was pounding like a vicious jackhammer, threatening to burst out of his chest if he didn't take the plunge soon. Even as he drew in a breath to speak again, Mina turned to him with a tilted head before she asked, "Are you okay? You're shivering like crazy." "Not really shivering," he said with a wobbly grin as the latest firework began to die down. "I won't lie, though I'm glad we're almost out of fireworks, 'cause it is cold out here." "Ah, then let's light 'em all up at once," she suggested. "It'll make for the grand finale of our little show, and then we can go inside and get warmed up." "Sounds good to me," he said as he moved to kneel in the sand, and nearly toppling over sideways in the process. "Dear ancestors, get it together," he told himself as he went to plant the 4 remaining fireworks in the sand and light their fuses. His hands were shaking more than his legs, so it took him a couple of tries to get them all lit successfully, and he barely got away in time for the first fountain to start spewing heat and light. In fact, he was so off balance that he wound up falling back on his hands and knees in front of Mina, who looked down at him with worry. "Korai, are you okay?" she asked as she moved to help him up. "I'm good," he said with a small shake of his head as he declined to stand. "Just needed to get something off my chest." As another one of the fireworks displays started to shoot up, he managed to balance himself so that he was on one knee in front of the pink girl while he reached into the pocket of the hoodie that he was wearing. Mina's dark eyes went so wide that Korai worried they might pop out of her head as he held up the little black box he had been saving for this moment. "Mina Ashido," he said with what he hoped was a strong enough voice, "I love you so much. I want everyone who meets us to know how much I love you, so, will you do me the honor of wearing this ring, and becoming my wife as soon as we're able?" So saying, he pried open the lid to show the ring that had been adorned by a single diamond. "Oh my dash! Korai, this is beautiful!" she gasped out as joyous tears slid down her eyes. "Of course I'll wear it. I want everyone to know that I love you, too. And I'll go straight to the marriage offices or whatever they're called right after our graduation ceremony, if you want to." With a huge smile on his face, Korai stood up and deftly slipped the ring onto her waiting finger before they kissed each other breathless, even as the fireworks behind them finally reached their crescendo. They remained like that until the sizzling and popping had died down, and Mina pulled back so that she could admire the ring she had been gifted with. "Seriously, this is a gorgeous ring. Korai, how'd you get your hands on something like this?" she asked through a breathy laugh as she continued to keep one arm possessively around his waist. "It was my mother's," he answered her as he pressed his brow against hers. "She wants you to have it, seems like it's her way of welcoming you into our family. She also gave me her wedding band, and my father's ring, for when we can finally tie the knot." "Wow, that's..." Mina shook her head in wonder at the gift that they had been given. "This is so sweet. Your mom is awesome." She could hardly believe what was happening right now. She had always imagined that this would be one of the greatest, most romantic moments of her life, but never did she think that she would actually get to experience it on a beach in the light of a fireworks show. Calling the feelings rushing through her right then surreal wouldn't have done the emotions credit. "She did say that I had to bring you with me for my next visit," Korai informed her. "So I'm sure you'll get your chance to thank her in person before too long." "For sure, whatever she wants," Mina said quickly. "I'll help her break out of prison for giving me this thing if she asked me to." "Mina. Dude, I'm not even kidding. Look at this thing, it's worth a prison break." "You know what else it is?" "What's that?" Korai asked as he prepared himself for another round of laughter or kisses, possibly both. He did get kissed, but it was very brief, and it was more so that Mina could keep her face close to his as she whispered, "Worth the wait. And I know the same is gonna be said when we finally hit our wedding day." Now that's a sentiment I can get behind. It was a long time before they grew cold enough to want to move away from the spot where they had taken a massive, near mystical step together into their future. It was late morning at the Haneda airport, and Korai was waiting for something to go utterly wrong, as it often did for him. It took everything he had in him not to fidget, pace, look nervous, or even out of place in the bustling center of transportation that was Japan's gateway to the rest of the world. He knew that he appeared as relaxed and casual as any traveler without a reason to be nervous ought to, but he still couldn't wait to get past the security checkpoints, where the odds of him being recognized and put up on social media would substantially decrease. Beyond that, once he made it to Clade, there was virtually no chances at all that someone would realize who he was, which would be a big load off of his shoulders. The thought that it was the lack of any sort of disguise that had him so apprehensive in his current setting did occur to him, but it didn't keep his teeth from being on constant edge. He was dressed in a typical vacationer's outfit, with loose jeans and comfortable sneakers on his feet, topped with a t-shirt and an open hoodie that he kept pulled back. His instinct was to pull it up to help cover his profile, but he knew that would look way too suspect in an airport, of all places. The only thing that was really keeping him anonymous for the moment was, ironically, his undisguised appearance. He even had dark circles under his eyes as the result of a night spent in the grip of several chilling nightmares that saw to him waking up in a cold sweat while swiping at the air in a frenzied panic as his fiancée worked tirelessly to calm him back down and lull him into a state of slumber as many times as she needed to. The first couple of nights had been restful enough for him. Having Mina by his side had certainly helped to keep his nerves steadied after his ordeal in Kanto, but now he knew that it was more due to the night terror suppression medication that his body hadn't quite passed from his system. Now that his innards had finished processing and purging the chemicals after 3 full days without a new dose, he saw many things whenever he tried to descend back into the realm of rest. Nine would be sneering at him as he choked the life from his broken body, Moonfish would cackle as he devoured his Armanu, the Shadow Nomu and its army of slaves came to take him back to Shigaraki, who would taunt his restless mind and torture his flesh endlessly as he sought to take one for all on behalf of his master. The end result was that Karai now looked the part of a jet-lagged traveler on his way either into or out from Japan. Maybe it wasn't even his lack of sleep or appearance itself that made him nervous, though perhaps it had to do with that of his traveling companion. Mina was also dressed in casual clothes, but there wasn't a lot that she could have done to disguise her pink skin and sand-colored horns without Yayarozu's help, which had led to a number of people staring from a distance, and even a few approaching the girl to ask for an autograph or offer condolences. These interactions had been largely brought about by the story the news had run following Kurai's death during the Battle of Nabu Island, which had named her as one of the heroes who had participated against the vastly powerful Nine, and as one of the people who had survived losing their classmate. Despite the fact that she had never interviewed for the matter nor had anyone in their school class 1A had been featured in the news often enough for those who were curious to be able to identify her in public. Due to predicting this fact, they had agreed that while they were waiting for Eri and Gran Torino to arrive with their luggage, they would keep within eyeshot of one another, but would not be in direct proximity to each other, as to avoid the chances that someone might figure out his identity based on their interactions with one another. Also to this end, Mina had quite reluctantly put her engagement ring on a necklace and kept it tucked inside her shirt. They definitely didn't need people asking questions about why she would suddenly be wearing such a piece during this time, when Karai had supposedly been dead a mere 2 months. After going through all the trouble to keep his resurrection a secret, they were determined to make sure that they stuck it out until the end, even if it wasn't their preference to be keeping their distance so soon after he had put an engagement ring on her hand. Here's hoping that Tokoyami was able to adequately explain things to Hawks, and Todoroki to his dad, Karai thought as he kept a sharp eye out for the number 1 and 2 heroes, both of whom were scheduled to leave at a similar time to his flight. Akarui had sent Mina a message saying that they would be running into some of their friends at the airport, as well as their current mentors, and that they would be doing their best to explain his revival without revealing the secret of One for All. Since they had yet to receive a message saying that they had failed said task, he was hoping it meant that they would be able to keep their heads down, even when they inevitably crossed paths in the terminal. He was about to signal Mina that he wanted to go get a drink when a familiar figure caught his eye. It took him a moment to be sure, but once he raised a hand in greeting with a smile pulling at the corners of his mouth. Not 3 seconds later, he was all but bowled over when a girl with a mop of raven tresses threw her arms around him and buried her face in his shoulder as she started to cry with relief. "Hey, it's okay," he said in a gentle tone as soon as he had recovered his breath and returned the hug. "I'm alright, see?" He had to bite back his instinct to curse as his wounds flared with pain from the rough contact, but quickly realized that the aches and stinging were starting to subside. "I'm so glad," Eri cried as she squeezed as hard as she could, her horn glowing softly as the pain of his wounds faded into memory. "You're really hick. Coming back to the hero course? Well, I can't afford to make things too easy for the villains, now can I?" Karai grinned tiredly as she pulled back to look at him through tear-filled eyes, his flesh fully restored to how it had been before he had been injured by One for All, 4 days ago. "And it's not really fair to leave the fate of the world to one kid, now is it? Gotta have 2 or 3 of us, at a minimum." Eri dashed at her eyes while a smile started to work its way across her face. "Ashid Queen was right," she said, her voice still shaky as she did. "About what?" "You're really good at getting people to smile when they're sad." Karai scratched at the back of his head while chuckling before he said, "I don't know if I'm that good at it, but I do know that I don't like seeing people I care about looking down in the dumps. If I can turn their day around, I'll do my best to make it happen." So saying, he pulled the girl in for another hug as he added, "It's good to see you doing well, Eri. Everyone's been singing your praises when I've talked to them on the phone. That means a lot, coming from you." Ahem. Both teenagers turned to see a grumpy-looking, older man dressed in a white and yellow hero's outfit, pulling along a small trolley loaded with a handful of bags and a couple of suitcases. "Your generation needs a refresher course on how to treat the elderly," he grumbled. Also, airport etiquette. What kind of idiot runs off and leaves their bags in the middle of a luggage terminal? That's how the bomb squads get called in. Sorry, Gran Torino, sir, Eri apologized as she pulled away from Karai and made a short bow in his direction. It won't happen again. Humph, the old hero muttered as he let go of the cart and moved to look his new charge up and down. You've been on the wrong end of a fair number of fights now, haven't you, boy? You could say that, Karai admitted as he glanced over his shoulder to see that Mina had recognized who he was talking to, and was now on her way to the security checkpoint, having already checked in her travel luggage. The briefcase with her hero outfit would serve as her carry-on for the flight, as would Karai's, now that Eri and Gran Torino had brought it. Akarui had texted the pair of them their tickets in the morning, so they had taken care to print them out shortly after arriving in the terminal. I know, that's why I'm saying it, the elderly hero now deadpanned in response to Karai's previous statement. Well, at least when we begin your training, we won't have to worry about you two shattering your fingers and toesies like your friend. It'll be more like when I trained Toshinori back in the day. The last part he added with a slightly evil grin that set the pair of one-for-all wielders on edge. We should probably get this stuff checked in so we can make the flight in time, Karai said as he indicated their compiled luggage. Can I check my bags, make sure everything is in place? Be quick about it, Gran Torino nodded. Yes, sir. Pulling the trolley aside, he removed a small suitcase that belonged to him, and quickly checked to make sure that he had several days' worth of clothes inside that would be preferable for a warmer climate, since they were headed for southern Europe, where even winters were considered to be pretty comfortable in terms of temperature. Also inside was a full bottle of his prescribed sleep-assisting medication, which would last him a month, though he hoped that this mission wouldn't take quite that long. Akarui packed your bag for you, Eri informed him as he nodded and started to zip the suitcase back up. Her face was still somewhat tear-stained, but she was also smiling, which he took as a good sign on her part. I figured, that's why I checked it, he admitted with another grin. I was half expecting there to be a half-melted chocolate in my jeans, but so far, so good. Wait, has he done that? Twice, actually, Karai muttered in exasperation. I'm honestly more disappointed in myself than him for letting it happen the second time. After inspecting the briefcase holding his hero gear while Eri stood guard to make sure that no one was peeking at the contents, Karai informed his mentor and new comrade that everything was in order. He had been informed that his saber was not going to be included in his luggage, as they didn't want to have any more inspections into his gear than was absolutely necessary, which he had accepted without complaint. Following that, they checked in their luggage and made their way through the security checkpoints, fortunately without any questions being asked. Since he was traveling undercover, Nizu had authorized Yayarozu and Akarui to make him a fake passport that would get him declared, though he also had the boy take his real passport, on the off chance that his brother's technical skills failed them, and he needed to prove that he was not someone on the run from the law. Of course, if it came to that, there would be a lot of explaining that would need to be done on his and Yue's part, but it was still better than him winding up in prison for trying to illegally cross the border. Fortunately, it didn't come to that, and Karai continued to maintain his identity as Madara Kayaba, since he had grown used to going by the name in a public setting. Thank the World Heroes Alliance for looser scrutiny when it comes to traveling heroes right now, Karai had thought as they approached the terminal where their plane was scheduled to arrive sometime in the next half hour. Now that they were past security and had only to wait for their transport, Mina was able to come be a part of their small group. So, you're the one that Nizu said was important enough to tag along if I was gonna take this guy with me, huh? Gran Torino asked as he jerked a thumb at Karai and looked the pink girl up and down. Well, like I said, it's no skin off my back if you come with us, but I'm not responsible for your safety when we get to Clade. Understood, sir, she said with a bright grin and a mock salute. I won't be holding you back, don't worry. She'll probably end up saving us a few times before all is said and done, Karai added with a matching grin of his own. Gran Torino rolled his eyes before he shuffled off while grumbling, you two remind me of Nana and her husband back in the day. I'm going to get some pastries if you want any, come while I'm feeling like sharing. If not, you're getting your own grub, newbies, and that goes for the plane ride, too. As tempting as that sounds, I think we've got other business to attend to, Karai said as he jerked his head over his shoulder. This led the others to see a towering man with red hair who was accompanied by 4 students in familiar uniforms, all of them approaching their general direction. "I'll run interference, see what the situation with him is," Mina said as she quickly moved away from the group, calling out to Izuku and Todoroki as they came nearer. Meanwhile, Eri and Karai moved into one of the souvenir shops while Gran Torino left to do his own thing. Fortunately for us, people have a hard time approaching Endeavor, so once we've ensured that he won't reveal my identity on accident, we should be good to talk with him in public, as long as we keep our voices down, Karai muttered as they each selected a random snack that looked appealing to them. While they moved to complete their purchase, his danger sense quirk kept him alerted to the general hostility that Endeavor tended to emanate wherever he went, and he half expected it to spike at any given moment. However, the real surprise came when the quirk suddenly went quiet, just in time for him and Eri to walk out of the little shop, even as Mina approached them with a relaxed look on her face. "He understands the situation," she informed them. "He did want a quick word with you, though." "What about?" Karai asked, still on edge despite the lack of a presence from Hikage's quirk. "He didn't say, but he looks about as chill as anyone's ever seen him, and I don't think he's trying to set you up," she assured him. "Plus, Izuku and the others wanted to see you before their flight starts loading." Karai weighed his options for a moment before he nodded and moved to follow her. Really, what choice did he have? There was more likely to be a scene if he refused the number 1 hero a meeting in public, so he might as well do what he could to keep things relatively quiet. That, and he did want to see his friends again before they had to go their separate ways for the upcoming mission. He wouldn't be able to interact with them like he had with Eri. She wasn't a big name from UA, so people didn't recognize her as a hero course student, meaning that him being around her wouldn't draw any close scrutiny on their part. That would not be the case with the others, since their images had been displayed in the news multiple times over the last year. He quickly came within a direct line of sight for the big hero and his 4 interns, and when he did, he gave his peers a friendly grin that one might give to people who were meeting for the first time. Of course, for those who knew Karai, they knew that he would never do such a thing, were this really his first time meeting someone. Normally, he was reserved and polite upon first interactions, and if he liked the person he had met, he would gradually become more relaxed in his mannerisms. This was more or less his way of sending them the silent message that he was ready to be back in the fight. "Endeavor," Karai said as he kept the expression on his face while extending a hand to the flame hero. "I'm flattered that you'd want to take a moment to speak with me. How can I assist you?" He was aware that there were several dozen eyes upon them, now inevitable, since the large man was Japan's top hero, but they didn't seem to be looking too closely at the teenager facing him just yet. Endeavor's blue eyes scrutinized him closely before he rumbled, "I'd like to invite you and your friends to the Centurion Lounge while we wait for our flights to arrive. There are some things I'd like to discuss with a young hero perspective like yourself." The words were delivered in a low tone so that only those directly beside him could hear, which Karai was grateful for. "We'd be foolish to turn that down," he said with a small incline of his head. "I'll follow your lead, then." Endeavor returned the nod and directed them toward a roped-off section that was for very limited access members of the credit union that partnered with Haneda. When he approached the guard, he showed him his ID and said, "They're all with me. Clubhouse regulations state 3 guests per card holder of this tier," the other man replied automatically. "What?" "Sir, if you'll allow me," Weiss said before the large hero lost his temper. Stepping forward, she then showed her own ID to the guard, whose eyebrow went up before he stepped aside with a slight bow of his head. "Everything seems to be in order," he said as he undid the rope and allowed them to pass by, Endeavor looking confused as he did. "Please enjoy your time in the lounge, Miss Schnee." "Thank you," Weiss replied with a charming smile as her friends and mentor moved on ahead of her. "Oh, and if it's not too much trouble, there will be an older gentleman coming along in a few minutes. I'd like you to admit him, as well. He'll be wearing a yellow cape as a part of his hero costume." "Of course, Miss Schnee." "Much appreciated," she said before moving to join the others, who were waiting just on the other side for her. "What was that?" Mina asked as Weiss swept past her. "How'd you score access higher than the number 1 hero?" The room was empty of people, save for the bartender and a young man who was wearing headphones as he stared at a book on the table in front of him. Karai sensed no danger from him, which more than likely meant that he was not equipped with a listening device. My father owns a large amount of stock in one of the airlines that partners with the Centurion Lounge, she answered, a trifle smugly as Endeavor went to order a drink. Whether he was doing this to give them a moment alone, none of them were certain, but the teenagers weren't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. You're still able to run favors on your family name? Kurai asked from the table he had taken in a secluded corner of the room, a lazy smile on his face. I thought your father would have disowned you by now. He has no proof that the recent breach in Schnee Support Industries security has anything to do with me, the pale girl said as she crossed the room to where he was, a stern look on her face. As for you. Hey, come on, I just got out of the hospital. His protest was cut off when he found himself seized up in another joint-popping hug, Weiss' strength belying her slender frame. How, are you this strong? He grunted out once he understood that he was not about to get slapped, something he now realized he should have recognized sooner, seeing his danger sense had continued to remain quiet. It's your own fault for making us worry so much. She scolded him. Would it have killed you to at least send a text message to say you were okay? My phone got blown up back in Kanto, he grumbled as Weiss finally released him. Couldn't have sent a message, even if I wanted to. Besides, Mina and Akarui were able to let you know I'm alright. It's not the same thing. We're glad to see you again, Izuku said as he took his turn to grab his friend by the shoulders, a wide smile on his face and tears in the corners of his eyes. We weren't looking forward to forming Team Lightning Drop without you. Okay, but you're still taking the role of team captain after we graduate, he chuckled as he returned the grip. I've carried this outfit long enough. I'm also glad to see you, Todoroki added with a rare smile as he shook hands firmly with his returned friend. School certainly hasn't been the same without you around. We get it, you all missed him, Bakugo grumbled as he glared at Kurai, who released Todoroki and turned to face the blonde student directly. Doesn't mean jack to me if he isn't coming back for the right reasons. Oh, don't you worry, the silver-haired teenager replied with a snarky grin. I know you missed me kicking your ass during combat practice. We can get right back to that after we've dealt with Hummer Eyes. The hell'd you say to Dash? Katsuki, not in the lounge. Weiss reprimanded him as she yanked his hand down from where it had been drawing back to throw a punch. Katsuki? Kurai repeated, his right eyebrow shooting up at the implications of the explosive student allowing anyone to call him by his first name, a privilege that not even Kirishima, his closest friend at UA, enjoyed. Bakugo's gaze narrowed while Izuku and Todoroki's eyes widened behind their friend. Don't say a word, he warned them. A word, Kurai snickered. Before Bakugo's temper could flare up again, a black whip tendril shot out from behind his rival's back and swallowed up his right hand completely, smothering any attempts at an explosion. By the way, you're dreaming if you think you've got a chance at smoking me, especially after what I was able to pull off in Kanto. They were mostly out of the line of sight from the bar, so no one from the lounge staff had seen the use of their quirks yet. Ha! Far from being further enraged, Bakugo suddenly gave vent to a feral grin before he added, you've already maxed out your new power good. Means I've got even more reason to beat you, going forward. I look forward to seeing you try, Kurai shot back before he allowed the energy to dissipate, just in time for Todoroki's father to come into their midst, drink in hand. Turning toward the big man, he then said, all right, Endeavor. What did you want to talk about? The number one hero regarded him with another intense gaze before he reached out his hand toward the younger hero with the words, you have my sincerest thanks for saving Shoto's life on Nabu. Without your efforts and sacrifice, I know that my son would not be standing here today. Kurai hesitated to take the hand offered to him. He still held a great deal of contempt for Enji Todoroki on account of his crimes against the rest of the Todoroki family, as well as the outright disrespect he had shown at his uncle's funeral, and he doubted that would ever change. However, he also knew that Shoto was choosing to set aside his far more justifiable hatred for the man in order to do what needed to be done, and that it was proving to be a more than beneficial experience for him. Holding on to resentments is what landed me in Itomori in the first place, he thought as he reached out and accepted the offered handshake. You're welcome, he told the large man. I know he would have done the same if our positions had been reversed. Even so, consider me in your debt, Endeavor replied, further startling those in attendance. When the day comes where you need help, call on me, and I will assist you however I am able. With that, he released Karai and turned away while saying, "Our flight board's in 15 minutes, Shoto. Don't be late." 15 minutes, huh? Mina said as he left their group. Well, it's not long, but I guess we should catch you guys up on a few things while we have the time. They watched him sit down at the bar, where he was soon joined by Gran Torino, who began to speak to the other hero in lowered tones over a plate of pastries. Not to worry, Eri already informed us of everything we need to know regarding the bases of Hamurais that the Alliance was able to find, Weiss told them before the Pink Girl could get started. The plan is, once Hamurais makes their move, we'll tell the pros that Hikari was able to do some cyber sleuthing that uncovered the hidden base, so we'll be in a perfect position to launch a counteroffensive. Why not just storm them now? Karai asked with a frown. Because your brother has yet to successfully break into their databanks in order to provide the proof we'd need to make such a claim, Todoroki told him. It's proving to be very frustrating for him. He's also working to develop a chemical compound that might be able to neutralize Trigger, Eri reminded them. He was running himself pretty ragged when we left UA. If they've got security that's challenging him, these guys might be even more prepared for trouble than the League ever was, Karai said with a small scowl. Damn. It's not often someone can outdo my brother's technical skills. Hamurais has some dedicated hands on deck. You done spouting the obvious? Bakugo growled. The point is, we can't just highlight their base on a map and tell the World Alliance, "Let's go over here," without them asking where we got the information from, Weiss pointed out. If we're going to be keeping your secrets, we need to wait until your brother pulls through, or the crisis emerges, so that people won't care how we got the information, so long as we did. That feels like we're playing with fire, no offense, Todoroki, Karai said with an apologetic gesture in his friend's direction, who merely brushed it aside as inconsequential. In any case, if it comes down to revealing my return and even the secret of our quirk versus the fate of the planet, it's a no-brainer. We're crushing Hamurais, no matter the personal cost. Agreed, Eri nodded. That said, I'm not letting you get yourself killed again. Your primary mission is to save the world, and mine is to make sure that you survive doing so. That job's mine from now on, Mina said as she wagged a finger at their friend. I'll let you play sidekick on that role, though. No offense, but what makes you more qualified to protect him than someone with Ares power? Weiss asked dubiously. Mina smirked triumphantly before she held up her left hand to display her engagement ring, which she had apparently slipped on when everyone else was distracted. Got my qualification right here, she said as she used her other hand to grab onto Karai. Holy dash! When that happened? Izuku blurted out. Just the other day, Karai answered with a wide grin of his own. It was the sweetest thing, Mina gushed while their friends took the opportunity to inspect the ring. He took me out to the beach after dinner, lit up some fireworks, got down on one knee, the whole works. That's amazing, Eri said with a joyful smile of her own that she directed at the couple. I'm so happy for the both of you. Thanks for helping to make it happen, Karai told her gratefully. We owe this to you. While Eri blushed and hid her smile behind her bangs, Weiss eyed the jewel with a practiced gaze before she said, That's quite an elegant piece, Hikari. How did you come by something like this? Karai could guess at the motive behind the seemingly innocent question fairly easily. Clearly, she was worried that Akarui had allowed his brother to use the money she had transferred to him on a personal matter, which would be justification for any potential irritation on her part. In order to prevent that from happening, he was quick to say, "It was my mother's ring. Since she's widowed and probably in jail for life, she wanted me to give it to Mina." That's a very generous gift, Todoroki commented, also looking glad for his friends. Congratulations, both of you. I wish you many long years of happiness together. Hear, hear. Eri cheered, followed by the echoed sentiments of the others. Well, all of them except Bakugo, that is. What's the point of wearing that thing? He asked in a grumpy manner. Ashido's court will just dissolve it as soon as she has to fight. Actually, thanks to my future brother-in-law, that isn't the case, Mina grinned, her good mood refusing to be dissipated. I got the ring a couple of days prior to our Nabu trip beginning, and before we left, I asked Akurui to see if there was a way to make it immune to her acid, Karai explained. I don't know exactly how he did it, but after I wound up in the hospital, he was able to treat the diamond and metal with some kind of compound so that it won't melt, like her hero costume. Of course he did, Bakugo muttered with a roll of his eyes, which then landed on Karai. You better not let this distract you from your goals, Sayamon. I want you at your best the day that I surpass you and become number 1. Actually, that'd make you number 2, Kaseri is Dash. She may end up more powerful, but you're the strongest of them all, Kai, Bakugo snorted as he went to walk away. A quirk can only take us so far, even the one you've got. Don't forget what it means to be the greatest. As he left, Mina was the one to comment in a surprised tone, that's probably the nicest thing I've ever heard him say. The time that the friends had to catch up was enjoyable but brief, and it wasn't long before Endeavor and his interns had to board their flight. Karai and the girls left the lounge with Gran Torino, feeling that it wouldn't really be appropriate for them to stay when their hosts had taken their leave. The second that they stepped out of the secluded area, there was collective rush of movement and excited squealing that immediately set the teenagers on edge, their first assumption being that someone had recognized Karai, and had amassed a group of followers to swarm him in pursuit of answers. This assumption was short-lived, ending as soon as they saw a sizable group of women chasing after Hawks, a flustered-looking Tokoyami in tow. Well, at least they're after him, and not me, Karai said with a nervous laugh to break the tension that got his other friends to chuckling while Endeavor merely scowled at what he obviously considered an unnecessary pandering to the masses. I get the feeling that's gonna be you in about 3 years, though, Mina giggled while Karai shook hands in farewell with his friends. To them, she said, safe flight, guys. See you after we take down Hummer-Eyes. Ha! Bakugo snorted. I think we'll see you after we turn the stupid bastards into ash. At this, Karai turned to Weiss and asked, so are you just attracted to delusions of grandeur, or Dash? That's it, Semir. The explosive student snarled while Weiss' face did an excellent impression of a tomato. Whoa, Kakin. Izuku yelped as he pulled on his peer's shoulder with Todoroki's assistance to keep him away from the grinning Karai. Not here. We're in an airport. This is the worst place you could ever use your quirk. I don't need a quirk to roast his smug ass. You young people waste too much energy, Gran Torino grumbled as Endeavor led his arguing interns away with an exasperated look on his face. Well, look at it this way, Karai replied as he maintained his grin contentedly. Now he'll be trapped on a plane for a few hours with nothing to do. That's not gonna do the Hummer-Eyes members that he finds any favors. You riled him up so that he would go ham on Hummer-Eyes? Mina asked with a raised eyebrow. Honey, I'm so proud of you. With that, they exchanged a high five, leading Gran Torino to roll his eyes again. Just like Nana and her husband. The flight went without incident, and the heroes found themselves checked into a pair of hotel rooms at a fairly nice establishment before dinner. Gran Torino and Karai would be sharing one room, with the girls setting up in the other. At the old man's insistence, they all donned their hero gear and prepared to go out on patrol. As Karai went to retrieve his clothes from the briefcase, he was surprised to realize that there were more items in it than he had initially assumed when he had checked it at the airport. In addition to his blue and orange GI, he was surprised to find an identical set of clothing that lay beneath it, save that the color theme had changed to be black with a white sash. Narrowing his eyes, he searched for the personal note that he knew would be with the instruction manual, and sure enough, there was a short letter from Akurui clipped to his scouter that he quickly opened. Your new look might need some new threads, but I kept your old gear, just in case you were more comfortable with it, the note read. You can swap out the blue scouter lens with a spare that I left with an uncolored tint if you decide to go with the new GI. Your sword isn't ready yet, but when I finish, it will function as before, as I'm reworking the internal mechanisms to charge based on the bioelectricity generated by your new quirk, so you won't have to worry about maintaining the batteries on the thing. It may take a little longer to charge than with Energon, but once the cell is at capacity, there should be no difference in functionality from there on. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy the new GI. Even he couldn't have thrown this together in a day, especially with everything that's going on right now, he thought as he put the letter down. How long has he been working on this? You gonna stand there gawking all afternoon, or are you gonna help me find some villains? Gran Torino grumbled, startling Kurai out of the thoughts that the note had brought up for him. Sorry, just let me get changed, he apologized. I'll be ready in 2 minutes, sir. So saying, he snatched up the briefcase and its contents before he rushed into the bathroom. When the two heroes met the heroines in the hallway, both of the girls were surprised to see Kai's new costume, though they had to admit, it complemented his new appearance quite well. Only Gran Torino seemed to have reservations as they headed outside to patrol the area. You sure about changing up your look so much? He asked the boy. You've already been well established with the other outfit. Well, I'm kind of going for the unobtrusive approach right now, Kai shrugged as they stepped in the warm afternoon of a busy city street. My last look paired better with my ability to turn my hair every color of the rainbow, which is no longer the case. Besides, didn't All Might go through 4 or 5 wardrobe changes with different color themes before he settled on his golden age look? You're no All Might yet, Sonny. I never wanted to be, and yet everyone else around me seems to love reminding me of the similarities that exist, the guardian hero grumbled. Usually the more negative tendencies. Hey, what did I say about the pessimism, Buster? Ashid Queen reminded him playfully, which drew a grin out of him again. Oh come on, you know I've always been a dash. He paused mid-reply, a frown swiftly returning to his face as he swung his head across the street, his gaze locking in on a small passerby with bright orange skin and a single antenna sticking straight up who was walking in front of a high-end restaurant. What his quirk was, Kai had no idea, but his danger sense quirk was practically lighting him up like a big neon sign that read bad news. Before the others could ask him what was wrong, he said in a hard tone, Orange guy needs a takedown, now. I'm on it, Cronoa said before anyone else could react. With a rush of wind and lightning, she appeared in front of the small man, her red eyes glaring down mightily at her target. Her sudden movement startled a number of pedestrians who backed away from the unfolding scene, even as black tendrils of energy appeared to form a makeshift barricade that kept anyone who might be curious from getting closer. As Kai approached with Ashid Queen in tow, he reflected that while Clade certainly had heroes to help keep the peace, they didn't have very many champions with quirks as flashy as theirs. Hopefully even if we get some airtime, no one will connect the dots before we lose the element of surprise, he thought as his fiancée moved to assist an elderly person who had lost their footing in the surprise of the moment. With no discernible effort, Cronoa seized the sparking man up by the collar and snapped, "Shut off your quirk, or I toss you sky high." Her bearing and tone had changed so drastically that she almost reminded her friends of Bakugo, and it was a little unnerving, if they were being honest. And why would I do that? Her detainee grunted as he tried to pry her fingers loose from his shirt, to no avail. I got nothing against you, but the greedy bastards that own this joint are gonna lose every dime that this place is worth. If you get caught up in what comes next, I won't lose much sleep over it. His antenna was spitting enough sparks to resemble the fireworks that Mina and Kurai had celebrated with 2 nights ago, and the smoke coming from his ears was almost pitch black. I warned you. Cronoa shot back. There was a flash of golden light, and suddenly the sparks and smoke had completely dissipated. Wadash. The man mumbled, clearly disoriented. I reversed him back to before he activated his quirk, whatever it is, Cronoa told the others as they approached, right before she delivered a knockout blow to his skull, leaving him as an unconscious mess on the sidewalk. He won't be blowing up any stores for a while. I thought you were actually gonna throw him, Ashid Queen admitted as she eyed their friend with a new appreciation. Nice thinking, girl. Those were some fast reaction times, Gran Torino commented as he walked up and prodded the insensate man with his staff. Not even 5 minutes out, and you've already got yourself a villain in the bag. Not bad, for a bunch of newbies. You call that not bad? Cronoa asked with a slightly arched eyebrow. Also, you can hardly call us newbies at this point. I've survived a literal apocalypse, and they've defeated All for One's copycat. Yeah, I didn't see you coming up with a way to stop him with 0 collateral damage, Kai remarked, right before Gran Torino's boot collided with his face, leaving him with a scuff mark and a slightly exasperated expression in its wake. There's your collateral damage, wise guy. The elder hero snapped as he glared up at his young charge. Alright, I deserve that. The fanfic is linked below.